Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Derrick Henry haunts my nightmares, Grossi. And today, oh baby, is heading into week 16, Sunday Night Football. This game has been circled since the schedule came out, and it is finally here. And so, to help break down this Sunday Night Football primetime matchup, we got the very popular YouTuber, MJ from Sports Fan Entertainment. MJ, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And very popular YouTuber. I will take that compliment coming from you, my friend.
Intro. Listen. We got to build our guests up. That's it. And listen, I got to say, I love the background. Everything that's going on in the background right now, I'm a huge fan of. I mean, the Lions, the Lions, they're whatever. But we got the Game of Thrones. We got Infinity War going on. I'm all about it.
And trust me, that is not for the Detroit Lions. That's my boy Aslan up there. So absolutely not staying far away from the Detroit Lions.
I figured, listen, because you're going to have to go to Narnia to actually find lions that are actually good. So that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a fantasy land for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, I've been looking forward to this, and this game, like I'm pretty pumped up about. I think that it's going to be an awesome test for both of our teams, and more so our defenses than anything, because I would not be surprised. This is a very high scoring affair. And I kind of just want to talk to you as a Titans fan for a bit before we break down the game, because the Titans have kind of like gone through this resurgence over the past couple of years in which they had like 9-7, but last year was like finally the good 9-7. And you kind of shocked the world, running through the Patriots, literally running through the Ravens, literally, and making it all the way to the AFC Championship game. So can you kind of just like give me your feelings and thoughts as that's going on? Like you make the playoffs next year, you sneak in. Did you think that you guys were poised to like go on the run that you did?
Well, really what happened is, if you think back, even over the last 2 decades, the Titans have always been a decent team, for the most part. But then really the huge dip happened in 2014 and 15, which allowed them to then select Marcus Mariota second overall in the 2015 NFL draft. And then his rookie year was absolutely still terrible. Then the year after, his sophomore year, they went 9-7, as you said, 9-7 the year after, but making the playoffs. And then 9-7 the year after, Marcus Mariota missed the final game, missing the playoffs. So we always knew the Titans were about a mid, maybe making the playoff team, a mid team in the NFL, maybe slightly better than average. Yeah. Last year, things started pretty terribly for the Titans. They started 2-4. Everyone wanted to burn the house down. Everyone wanted to fire, Mike Vrabel, the head coach. Everyone wanted to get Marcus Mariota out of there. I was actually one of the people, unfortunately, I can say to this day, that thought Mariota still should have been in there, but they put in Ryan Tannehill. And pretty much since that moment, they've been off to the races. What is that? Finishing 7-3 in the regular season last season, and then winning the wild card game against the New England Patriots, essentially ending their dynasty. I mean, that is what essentially sent Tom Brady out of New England. That will forever be known as his final loss as a New England Patriot, upsetting the Baltimore Ravens in the divisional round. It really was Ryan Tannehill. I mean, it was just enough of a difference at the quarterback position for the run game to become as dominant as it is now. And at the time before this season, for the defense to look better than it had. Now, this year, the defense is awful. They let go of key players of the defense, specifically Jarrell Casey, Logan Ryan, that were veterans for the team. They really held things down. But really, when Ryan Tannehill took over in that Denver Broncos game last year, week 6, that's when things really changed for this football team.
Yeah, and I think, kind of alluding to the fact that Tom Brady's last, throws a pick 6 as a New England Patriot is just, you saved the world. Is it basically, like, you could say it, right? Like, you'd be like, I ended their tyranny. Like, you did
absolutely,
that. Yeah. Dolphins are like, we made them lose, so they dropped down to go into the wild card round, and listen, claps all around, but like, you guys did the work. You got it done. And I mean, the Ravens game too, just watching that game, like, I just remember sitting here going, oh crap, like, this is a thing. Like, this is going to be a thing. And I think that, to your point that you mentioned about Tannehill coming in, obviously he spent a lot of time with the Dolphins, and whether you want to say it was underutilization, just not the right personnel around him, never had that dominant run game to really support him. What do you think it was about Tannehill that like allowed him to be successful in Tennessee and didn't allow him to be successful in Miami?
I mean, more and more, I'm looking at Adam Gase. I mean, I just think this guy is absolutely terrible. I think he's one of the worst head coaches actually in NFL history at this point.
I mean,
you see after he's now left Miami, Brian Flores last year was 5-11, but you could see the Dolphins were showing life. Now they're 9-5 ascending. You see Devontae Parker, a wide receiver that struggled under Adam Gase, now becoming one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. You see Ryan Tannehill leaving the Dolphins. At the time, people would have said Tannehill is a worse quarterback than Mariota. That's what we thought. Then all of a sudden, Tannehill comes in, performs much better than Marcus Mariota. And that's why I'm telling people right now, do not sleep on Sam Darnold if Sam Darnold ends up being traded or whatever, wherever he goes, because obviously Adam Gase, wherever he goes, whatever he touches turns to crap. I mean, this is just what's going on with this guy. The Jets were bad. They weren't this bad. Now they are going to be, they look like they're going to be winless, and then they end up winning a game somehow this past week. But the guy is just an awful head coach. But yeah, he has definitely better protection here in Tennessee. Yeah. Certainly a better run game, don't get me wrong. But I think the whole Dolphins organization under Adam Gase just really underutilized everyone that they had. Larry Tunsil's left is now one of the best left tackles in the league. It's just the names on the list just go on and on and on of the players that underwhelmed under Adam Gase, under that Miami Dolphins regime. It's just really pathetic when you look back at it.
Yeah, and I think that what stands out about Tannehill is just how careful he's been with the football. And I feel like, you have Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, them being like the front runners for MVP. But Tannehill's having like a phenomenal season. He has over 3,400 yards, 31 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 4 on the ground, getting into like, those are just like impressive ass stats. But I feel like he's never in that conversation. Like he's not like with the Mahomes and Rodgers. Any idea, like, is that just media bias? Like, or is it just like Tannehill's not like a household name?
Well, yes, I would say it's media / confirmation bias. For a lot of people, the jury's out on Ryan Tannehill. They already believe they know what he is. They saw him at Miami, and it's just so hard for them to take whatever they viewed back then out of their minds. It's been a while since we've seen a quarterback truly have a resurgence like this. And even Alex Smith, remember Alex Smith, he went from being awful in San Francisco to being pretty damn decent in, Kansas City. But even then people were like, he's still Alex Smith. It's always hard to beat and change that narrative whenever it's said, especially when you completely fail with the team. Sometimes you can, perform a little poorly for a team, but then you'll get better over time, and then the narrative can change. When you really perform poor, maybe Teddy wasn't poor, but for the 7 years he's in Miami, just being decent at best, that narrative was formed. And it also didn't help that whenever the Titans were on, national television last season, whenever they were on primetime and in the playoff games, Tano actually didn't do much. Those games were not indicative of what he did for us the entire year. There's a reason why, yes, he is leading the league in touchdowns, total touchdowns, passing and rushing, since he's taken over as quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. He's leading the NFL in pass rating since he took over for the Tennessee Titans. He's leading in yards per attempt. So people unforce every single time. It's so frustrating that we're on national television. For some reason, people don't see the Tannehill that we see week to week. And maybe that's a Tannehill thing, but I don't necessarily believe that, because at the end of the day, we did enough to beat New England last year in the wild card round. We did enough to beat Baltimore, and then hopefully we do enough to beat you too. Yeah. But we'll see on that.
Yeah, I think, heading into this season too was, I don't know, like I feel like it was different, right? Because like you had this run at the end and you were like, crap. And I mean, listen, I felt the same exact way as a Packer fan. I was like, wow, like we definitely exceeded our expectations, and I most definitely like overachieved last year. Like looking at that new head coach, just so many differences. And with you, like you said, starting with Mariota, rough start to the season, you go on a tear with Tannehill, you beat 2 of the best teams in the playoffs, and then boom, like here we are. So heading into this season, like we're looking at preseason, you obviously are extending guys like Tannehill, you extend Derrick Henry. Before we jump into what your expectations were for the season, how did we feel about those extensions? Because I know Tannehill, I think, makes more sense to me. But I think in terms of Henry, who arguably is the best running back in football right now, there's always that, like, do you give a lot of money to running backs kind of, idea. So I'm curious to kind of like what your stance were on those 2 big contracts.
Yeah, so we'll start with the Derrick Henry one. I was on board with it. I feel like at least 85% of the Titans fan base was on board with it. And this is despite being traumatized from the contract that we gave Chris Johnson. Yep. The key difference between Chris Johnson and Derrick Henry Derrick Henry really didn't play much his first 2 years. Mm-hmm. His first year, he was splitting carries with DeMarco Murray, and Murray was getting significantly more. Second year, he was still splitting carries with DeMarco Murray. Then he took over late end of the year. And then it was literally just the last 2 years before his big payday, and certainly the last year when he actually broke 1,500 yards, where he was getting a bulk of the carries. But you just look at Derrick Henry, and you just know that the work he puts in, this guy looks indestructible. Yeah. We just had faith that, a 4-year extension for this guy that still has, the years that we've given him in terms of just in terms of like the tread on his tires. I still think he has 3, 4, 5 years left. He looked a lot more like Marshawn Lynch than Chris Johnson to us in terms of sustainability, durability, and in terms of the success that he got moving forward. So most of us felt great about Derrick Henry. Now, about Tannehill, it was a little less, I'll say 75, 80%. The only other factor that came into play was the Tom Brady rumor. Some people wanted to go for Tom Brady, and I think these rumors were legitimate in order to just, take advantage of the roster that we had now that we deemed to be Super Bowl worthy, and believing that Tom Brady would be, better late and in the playoffs than Ryan Tannehill. Well, actually remains to be seen on that, because I believe the Bucs will make the playoffs, the Titans will make the playoffs, and we'll see, if maybe that will end up being true at the end of the day. But I mean, Tannehill just played so well last season, and time again, we saw that it truly wasn't an aberration, where most of the Titans fan base, and including myself, was absolutely down for that Tannehill extension. And I thought the number ended up being a damn good number as well, just about $30 million for him. Yeah. And Derrick Henry ended up getting paid, I want to say, less than Le'Veon Bell, or just about as much as Le'Veon Bell. It was much less than Ezekiel Elliott, about what David Johnson was getting paid. So we thought it was great market value, and we took that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because like you said, too, when they actually re-signed him, I was like, oh, okay, like that's less than I thought it was going to be. Like you look at like a Dalvin Cook, right, who like basically just got everything thrown at him too. Like, again, like similar ideal of like, okay, I mean, like you have literally like a guy locked up for a good amount of time, and even if let's go low end, if it's 3 years, you have 3 years of essentially you don't have to worry about your run game.
Exactly.
That's a pretty good trade-off. So then heading in, you lock up, your two main guys. You mentioned the defense before. Kind of what were your expectations going into this year? Like, were you like, okay, we're going to be contenders for the Super Bowl again? We're going to win the division, which is a definitely wide open division. Kind of what were your thoughts heading into this season?
So my thoughts primarily were that last season was going to be an extension into this season and how the team looked. Pretty much almost exactly. I thought the defense was going to look almost the same and the offense was going to look almost the same. But oddly enough, the offense ended up just exploding this season, and the defense turned to absolute trash. Now, I thought this was all going to turn into about an 11-5 record, and right now we're 10-4, and if we lose to you guys and beat the Texans, we'll be 11-5. So it's actually shaking out how I ended up thinking it would. But, I mean, the defense this year, it is shocking for us Tennessee Titans fans. I mean, and even as outside fans, you guys know the Titans are known historically for their defense, for their run game. Mm-hmm. That's been our move, even when we've had the better offensive players that we've had in Chris Johnson and even Vince Young's little heyday. He wasn't throwing for 300 yards a game. It was fun. Steve McNair, I love Steve McNair. He wasn't throwing for 400 yards a game. This has been our formula: defense, run game, Jeff Fisher ball. That's been our move. Now, all of a sudden, we're the number one offense in the NFL. We have the most points in the NFL.
True.
We're throwing the rock like crazy, and we always had faith in these guys. I was always a huge supporter and stan of Corey Davis, and I'm happy that finally everything is coming to fruition for him. Hopefully we get him extended. A.J. Brown, I had him number one as the wide receiver coming out of that draft class. Now, DK Metcalf looks great. Terry McLaurin looked great. They're all great. But I loved A.J. Brown coming out. I was excited for him. He got over 1,000 yards his rookie season. Looks to get over 1,000 yards again and has made the Pro Bowl. We knew what Tannehill gave us last season. We knew what Derrick Henry gave us last season. So the potential for the offense to be great was there. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I just thought we'll probably be, anywhere, top 10-ish, maybe even borderline top 5. I was not expecting number one. And then conversely, the defense being this bad, again, losing defensive tackle Jarrell Casey, losing cornerback Logan Ryan. Yeah, those were big losses, but they also got Jadeveon Clowney, who ended up coming in, not even getting a sack, having now a meniscus injury, being out for the season. They've also had some other injuries here or there, like they're finally getting their best cornerback back in Adoree Jackson, and he played very well in his, season debut last week. But for the defense to taking the step back that it has, and primarily, I believe, because their defensive coordinator last year, Dean Pease, former defensive coordinator for the Super Bowl winning Baltimore Ravens in 2012, his retirement, and Mike Vrabel, who's a great head coach, but Mike Vrabel's refusal to replace him with any defensive coordinator. We don't have a defensive coordinator right now, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's been such a critical mistake and has really turned into the worst Tennessee Titans defense we've had since at least 2014 or 15.
I mean, like, it's funny. Obviously, we didn't have the run game, but I'm getting like shades of like 2011 Packers. It's just like, it's okay, offense, go out and win the game. Well, let's pretend we don't even have a defense on the other side of the ball.
Yep.
Yeah. And listen, like, it's worked, right? Like it's gotten enough done. And I mean, you can control time of possession, because Derrick Henry is being a monster, or Tannehill's going to like tear you up. I mean, that was the thing last week against the Lions. Everything that went viral was all about Derrick Henry. I mean, stiff arming the man literally out of his body, which was great to watch. A little terrifying, but great to watch. But like Tannehill has 5 touchdowns. So like I'm looking at this game and I feel like all the focus, and somewhat rightfully so, is on Derrick Henry. But at the same time, I'm also looking like, even if we sold out in trying to stop Derrick Henry, we still have Ryan Tannehill and the rest of that offense to worry about. So kind of looking ahead at this Sunday's game, prime time, it is in Lambeau, and it's supposed to be like 18 degrees. I believe it's supposed to be like some snow flurries and things like that. Oh, I imagine they're going to run the rock a lot. What are the keys to the game for you in order for the Titans to walk out of Lambeau with a win?
The Titans absolutely have to start with a lead. This has been a consistent thing throughout this season. They can play from behind, but when they do, they have to take Derrick Henry essentially out of the football game. He can still get his carry here or there, and he can, do some things in the receiving game, but not nearly enough to be a huge threat. If the Packers go ahead early in this game by double digits, I'll say, they're just going to run through the game. It's hard to say exactly, definitively now that Adoree Jackson, who I mentioned was the Titans' best cornerback, that is back. The pass defense did look better last week, but it's looked so bad all season long. There's a reason why the Cincinnati Bengals are one of our losses. There's a reason why we almost lost to the Vikings. There's a reason why we almost lost to the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Our secondary is piss poor. I mean, it is awful. Our whole zone coverage on defense is really bad. Yeah. And we're still dealing with injuries on that side of the football right now. So absolutely have to get a lead if you're the Tennessee Titans. If you're the Packers, prevent the Titans from getting a lead, because the Packers' run defense has not been great this year. Hasn't necessarily had to be.
Yeah.
But, I think you're averaging like maybe 4.5 yards a carry. Yeah, that's not going to work against Derrick Henry, especially early in the game, because although you may be allowing 4.5 yards a carry to the NFL, Derrick Henry is going to run about 5 on you at least, if that's the case. So for the Packers, you have to stop the run early and get an early a lead as possible as you can. And I'm telling you, if you guys get a lead, Aaron Rodgers is going to rip us to shreds. I guarantee it 100%. I've seen it too many times, not from Rodgers, but from every single quarterback that we faced this season. We're not giving one quarterback hell. We have no pass rush. I don't think we got a sack in, I want to say 12 quarters, like 3 games at this point. We haven't gotten one sack. So Aaron Rodgers is going to sit in the pocket all day long. He's going to rip us to shreds. I know this for a fact.
Yeah, I feel like what it comes down to is, because listen, the Packers, as they did against the Colts, as they did against the Panthers, they've had this a couple of times where they go out to a big like double-digit lead going into halftime, and we're like, yes, like this is gonna be golden, and then they do nothing in the second half. They lose to the Colts because of that, and they only scored 3 points against the Panthers, and they made it more of a close game last week. So like, I like to believe you, but I also am a little worried about that second half. Like, it just needs to be a full performance game. And I think for the Titans, like what it comes down to as well is it is like keeping Aaron Rodgers off the field and literally giving the rock to Derrick Henry and passing, obviously, but controlling that time of possession and just like essentially eliminating them completely, because they're most likely going to score, right? So then it might just come down to, okay, we got to make sure we have the ball last. So then we go and score, and then that's that. But I feel like this is going to be a damn close game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. And also on that note, it's interesting. I think whenever the Packers have had struggles in the second half, they at least face teams that have been getting, after their Aaron Rodgers a little bit, making him a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. We don't really do that. So that's why I'm so concerned if the Packers get ahead in the game.
Okay. All right. So good to know that like Rodgers will be well protected, because last week, I will say, the offensive line has been really, really good this year. Corey Linsley is out. But he came back to practice, our center, who's having an all-pro year this year. But we allowed, I think it was 4 sacks last week against the Panthers, which again, listen, the Panthers have a pretty good defense. They're not terrible. But yeah, okay, that's at least reassuring that Rodgers can just be like, okay, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to throw the ball.
Yeah, if we get 4 sacks in 4 games, we're happy.
You're like, that's where the bar is.
Yeah.
So kind of last thing, regardless of how Sunday goes, you guys are obviously going to be making the playoffs, in contention to win the South, still battling out with the Colts. How do you see the rest of your season entering the postseason? Like, how does you see that panning out? Do you think that you're one of those teams that like has a shot against like a Chiefs? I would have said the Steelers 2 weeks ago, but I'm not going to say the Steelers anymore. But like, a Chiefs team, a Bills team who's been playing really well. Like, do you think that like you have the team to be like going into one of those places and pulling off a W and potentially going to the Super Bowl?
The Titans could be any team in the NFL, and that is including the NFL. That is including the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe that to be 100% true. And they have currently, like I said, the best offense in the league that includes a better offense than the Kansas City Chiefs.
True.
My only problem with this team is, can they do it multiple times in a row? They beat the Buffalo Bills 42-16. I want to say that's the Bills' last loss. I want to say, yeah, for sure, that's their most embarrassing loss of the season, right? And the Bills are probably going to end up being the 2nd seed in the AFC at this point.
Yeah.
They could be any team any given week. The problem is, can they win 3 or 4 in a row to actually get to the Super Bowl and win it? That's my problem. Yeah. But if they get ahead on Kansas City, they run the ball well, they get the occasional stop with Patrick Mahomes, yeah, they can put up 45 on the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City and beat them. I know this 100% because I've seen this team dominate the Colts. I've seen this team dominate the Bills, but I've also seen them not show up in the first half against the Cleveland Browns, allow 5 touchdowns in the first half, and the game's over. It just depends on the week, but they could beat anyone any given week.
I feel like that has really just been like the theme of this year. Like it honestly, like I at this point trying to predict games, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know what team's going to show up. I don't like, it's so difficult. Like there's so much parity in the NFL right now. Like it's just so insane. And yeah, I mean, I think, you talk about the dominant run teams in the AFC right now. The Colts are starting to come alive a little bit with like Jonathan Taylor. The Steelers really have a lack of a run game. The Chiefs really haven't been utilizing their run game. Bills, depends. Josh Allen's been doing a bunch of it. Yeah, I think that, you have a set of skills that definitely could put you over the top. And again, it's kind of like pick your poison with the Titans offense, because which one do you want to die by?
Yeah, man, essentially. And then one more thing to look at for our season is we are currently balancing the potential for Derrick Henry to get 2,000 rushing yards.
Yes. But
also trying to keep him healthy and ready for the playoffs. I think right now he's at 1,600, maybe 80. So he needs like 160-ish yards per game for the last 2 games. How do we balance that? Does that matter? Personally, I think it matters if anyone has the opportunity to get that accolade, I'll put them at the opportunity to do so. But we'll see what Mike Vrabel decides to do. Yeah.
No, it's very, very true. Listen, Packers have given up some records. We've given up to 2,000-yard rushers, little Adrian Peterson a few years back. So, crazier things have happened. I hope, listen, if you get like 100 rushing yards and then get like 260 next week, like, that's cool. Like you could do that. Like I'm totally down with that. So go for it. Just don't win. That's all I'm asking.
As long as, and I don't think this is going to happen because the way they're playing right now, it's just incredibly hard to believe that it will happen. But as long as the Steelers can beat the Colts, we can afford a loss to you guys. Beat the Texans week 17. We win the AFC South. We're good. We're not a contender for this bye week right now, the singular bye week in the AFC. It's not going to happen. I just still want to win the AFC South. So as long as, and I don't know if it's going to happen because the Steelers are asleep. They're a sleeping beauty right now.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing beautiful about them. So they're just sleeping ugly.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can somehow beat the Colts, I'll be happy. And I'll just go into Sunday night saying, okay, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, listen, if the Rams beat the Seahawks and then we beat you guys, we're the number 1 overall seed and like we clinch it. So lot riding on this game for the Green Bay Packers. So we shall see, my friend. But MJ, I really appreciate you coming on, talking about Titans Packers, kind of giving us a lowdown. Please tell all the people where they can find all the things that you do.
Yeah, man. So the number one thing is my YouTube channel, Sports Fan Entertainment. I'm sure a link will be down in the description box below, but you can also search it. It's not hard to spell, Sports Fan Entertainment. And also my Twitter is at the MJ Take. Once again, that is at the MJ Take. And that's really it. Anything more that you want to find, you can find via those links.
Beautiful. MJ, it's been a pleasure. I wish you all the luck and many upsets in the playoffs for you and your team. And because Mike Vrabel is he's a heck of I like him a lot. He's a good coach. And plus, when he almost got into like a fist fight a few weeks ago, that was pretty cool too. So
oh yeah, and who knows? We could be seeing a Super Bowl preview this Sunday night.
Listen, I'm about it. So go and check out MJ and all the things that he does. The links will be in the description down below. Should be a great game on Sunday night and potentially clinching the NFC for the Green Bay Packers. We shall see. You guys find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at TomGrossiComedy. All social media you see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic holiday if you're celebrating. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack, go.